What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review. This is our weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And this week we are back with more of The Gathering Storm. Specifically, we are here for Chapter 6 of The Gathering Storm, and all of these chapters, the book itself, is by Django Wexler. My quick review at the top, I liked this one. I thought it was good. I thought that it did a good job of culminating a lot of the story that we've had up to this point. It had a lot of interesting characters in it that we got to hear a lot more from, like big name characters. So I really enjoyed it. I think this is definitely worth your time.
I have to agree that it was definitely worth your time. I enjoyed it. I think that it was interesting. I think it had more, as you would put it, intrigue than some of the other stories, for sure.
Agree.
Because, like you said, I feel like there was a lot more happening.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, right? Because some people will call like fight scenes and things like that action scenes, right? Which is a proper description. But that was more in the last one. There weren't any fight scenes in this one, and yet, as Amy said, I would also agree that more happened in this one. That there was more action, yet not action, if that makes sense. So that's our quick review up at the top. We highly recommend that you go seek out this story and try to read it, specifically this chapter, of course, because that's what we're covering. But I wouldn't, if this is your first video, I wouldn't just read chapter 6. That won't make a ton of sense to you. I mean, I guess if you know all the other stories, then maybe. But I still recommend that you try to take the time, if you have it, to read all of them. They are free if you can find them online. Just search The Gathering Storm by Django Wexler. You can probably find it chapter by chapter. If you find one chapter or can get somebody to email it to you, they have clickable links to the other chapters up at the top, at least the previous one, but then that one will have to the previous, and etc.
Yeah.
So you should be able to read them all through there. And like I said, they are free, so it's just the time investment of finding them is the only investment that you have to make in reading these, besides the time of actually reading them. And like we said, we think they're worth your time. So yeah, we recommend that you do that, and then you can come back here and join us for our review. Speaking of which, onto the full review itself. We start, again, light reminder this time, not as heavy as it has been previously, but a light reminder back to the fact that we've learned a little bit about Rawl's past. Mm-hmm. And because he just mentions what it was like living in the particular area of Ravnica in which he grew up, and what that meant for him. And he remembered that because he was on a skyship going up into the sky, which seemed to be somewhat of a luxury, like, tourist skyship for people to, like, look down over the large city.
And their noses up.
Right, yeah, pretty much. But yeah, they're able to go down and, or go up and look down and see the city from new heights, and it seemed like there were a lot of children and kids leaning over the railing and people leaning over the railing to look down over the edge. And we find out that Rawl is not there to see the city because he seemed to know enough about the skyship. He was there to covertly meet with Lavinia again.
Yeah.
And the last time we saw them, Lavinia and Rawl, Lavinia had been following stealthily, but Hekara saw her, so not that stealthily, behind them, and Rawl spoke to her and basically said, if you could get me some information on Vraska, I'd appreciate it, because I got to go meet with her. So please tell me some stuff. So that was what Lavinia was doing, and the reason that they were meeting on the skyship, Lavinia said, is because they needed to get above the cloud cover, which helped block them from the view of the Thopters, which we've been hearing a lot more about. We know why that is, but they don't seem to as much get it yet. I'm sure that will become much more obvious and annoying to them in the future. Well,
I also see us getting like considerably closer to the point where the story starts to meld into what we see in the novel, the other novel.
Yeah.
And I feel like, because I feel like the beginning of these stories were sort of very separate. Because it was very much trying to get you in the mindset of being on Ravnica. but now it's actually seeming to push forward toward where that novel began.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like I can actually see that now.
Yeah, I
the
think
progression has started to progress.
Yeah, I think we're still missing the huge point of Isperia and Hekara dying.
Yeah.
We still have to get to that point, and we're not there. But I feel like that's whether that's like the climax, and then you have the falling action only after that. That remains to be seen. But that makes the most sense at this point. But we are, like you said, we are getting a lot of the key players kind of revealing themselves and meeting each other, because as we know in the novel, they kind of allude back to the big moments that happen among them, and yet they're now meeting for the first time, basically even just in this story. So yeah, that's a good point. You also had some thoughts about Lavinia and how everybody is lucky that she's kind of so smart.
I feel like Lavinia is the Hermione Granger. She is the only one who knows things, and everyone just doesn't even care. They like don't appreciate the fact that she is the only one who seemingly just bails them out.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put that.
Yeah, I mean, well, and she's been acting in the shadows.
Yeah.
She's been working outside of the Azorius, which really just means outside of all of the guilds.
Right.
She's like arguably guildless, although kind of working off of the ideology of the original Azorius, which she feels that they've kind of moved away from. They being like Isperia under the advisement of Dovin Bond.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense. And it's a good thing to see a character like Lavinia, because what we've mostly seen Lavinia as in recent Magic history is just the person who annoys Jace about having to do his job.
Right.
Right? And that's not who Lavinia is. The reason she is annoying Jace about doing his job is because
it's his job.
And
she has to do it.
Right, and the Living Guild Pact is a pretty big deal, as we now see, because there's so much conflict among all of the guilds that even Rahl is now getting to the point of being like, screw this Bellerin guy, like, we need him here to be able to do this stuff, and look what's happening without him, like, we need to get moving on this stuff now.
Yeah, we can't depend on this guy, obviously, so we need to just do the best we can do ourselves without him, and try to compensate.
Yeah, which is...
even if it means making the Firemind the new guild pact.
Yeah. And so, yes, so that was Amy's point about Lavinia. Then we get some more information, just through Lavinia talking about Vraska to Rahl. We get some more information. I believe this is not new information, although I don't know that it's ever been even closely to expressly stated like this. I could be wrong, but I feel like I knew this already. But Lavinia kind of alludes to, and Rahl kind of draws the conclusion of how Vraska sparked, specifically, which is that she was kind of being beaten by the Azorius guards and then just disappeared, which Rahl even says, oh, that's probably when her spark ignites, because it's usually during periods of trauma or excitement or something like that. And so I feel like we knew that already, or at least that it could have been assumed. But if not, then yeah, this is another... either a continuation of that information or new information that I just feel like made sense to me, that, she would have sparked while dealing with the trauma that she suffered from at the hands of the Azorius.
Of course.
Go ahead, please.
We were just talking about a good characterization of Lavinia.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in contrast, I wanted to mention that I feel like the characterization of Hekara is a bit crappy.
Why do you say that?
I think she just feels very dumb, everything she says is so repetitive.
It's super funny that you bring that up, because I didn't write it down, so thank you for bringing it up and remembering it. Vraska thinks when she meets Hekara, and I thought this was very clever, Vraska thinks that she's curious about Hekara and whether Hekara is that dumb or is just playing dumb. especially because Rakdos is the one that sent her in particular. And so the question is she doing what you're talking about on purpose? Is she playing dumb on purpose? Well, I don't necessarily think so either, but I was trying to think back to Rat and how much Rat loved Hekara. And that could very well be because Rat is a little immature and Hekara is a lot immature, and so Rat kind of looks up to someone like Hekara who is just does whatever the hell she wants because she's a Rakdos, and so she can kind of get away with it, where she can be out late, she can dress how she wants, she can say what she feels right off, immediately when it comes to her mind, whereas Rat may feel a little bit more reserved than that, and may look up to Hekara because of that, because Hekara is someone who doesn't necessarily care as much what people think. But I thought it reminded me, it made me go back to the Corset 2019 Bolus, or the Chronicles of Bolus stories, where we finally learn about Bolus's side of the story, and him saying that Ugin's side of the story is fabricated as well. And then you have in your mind just the thought of, okay, so we have Ugin's side of the story and we have Bolus's side of the story, but Ugin's side of the story we've just kind of been assuming the whole time has been the truth, but now we're being kind of fed the fact that it might not be the truth. It might be a little bit of a fabrication, a little bit of a fib, or like adding on to the story to make it seem better than it is, in favor of Ugin and or against Bolus. And in this case now, with Vraska's intuition, which she's not in the best headspace in the moment that she says it,
right.
But at the same time, I don't think you can immediately discount it, because she is rather intelligent. She is an assassin by trade, so she kind of has to have those instincts that you have to kind of be able to trust.
Right.
And that was her first thought when it came to Hekara is she really that dumb? Because if you look back or think back on a lot of the things that Hekara has done, I mean, showing that she has no weapons and then being able to produce it and be behind that assassin that was trying to kill Amara last week so quickly and just slit her throat, right? Rahl even says he didn't even see her move there or hear her, and she just slits her throat, and then later on, like, cartwheels over to the window or whatever.
Right.
But, like, there's that moment of, oh, pardon my French, but the shit's about to hit the fan.
Yeah.
And so Hekara goes into attack mode, does what she has to do, and then now that the threat is over, she can be more playful, right? She can do the cartwheels and go back to maybe faking it. Maybe not. Maybe you're right, and she is just dumb. But I don't know. I liked that they allowed that seed of doubt to be planted with just that one line from Vraska. Now, it seems like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you were not as convinced.
Yeah, I just feel like it's poor characterization. I honestly feel that these stories were written prior to the novel.
I would think so too, only because, or at least the broad bits, because the story spotlight moments were in the cards so long prior to the novel.
Or, I shouldn't say actually fully prior, because if they were, it would be released prior.
You would think.
But I think they were written around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that the characterization used in the novel was usable research for the characterization used in these stories.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that this author just characterized her in that way, and the novel characterized her in a different way, and I think it's just mismatched again.
Okay, so let me ask you, based on your reading now of this story up to this point, right? We have at the time of recording, we have read this story up to the end of chapter 6. There are 20 total, so we are missing 14, but that's up to the time of recording this episode. but you've also read the entirety of the novel as well as the parallel rat-themed stories through the website. Which, in your mind, if you had to pick one, which characterization of Hakara would you pick? I know you read the novel first and the rat parallels first, but does that mean that you would think that the novel is the appropriate characterization, or would you put this as the appropriate
and that's why I'm saying
characterization?
I don't like the characterization in this, because I liked the character of Hakara until we started reading these stories and went, what the heck?
Oh, okay.
This is such a one-note, dumb character.
Okay. And it's funny because I think because the characterization of so many characters in the novel was just so poor that I would rather, and maybe my brain is just doing it by default, but I would rather say that these stories are the appropriate characterizations instead. But again, if, I guess my theory that I drew from Veraska's comment in the story is correct, that I think is pretty impressive. If Hakara is in fact playing dumb this whole time. And then, especially if by the time we get to the novel, right, so at the end of this book, or these chapters, if by the end of this, and she dies, they find that she is not dumb, then her characterization in the novel would likely make more sense.
Yeah.
So, who knows? Maybe we just have to keep reading.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like the fact that Veraska said it makes it seem like she is, but if Veraska hadn't said it, it never would have crossed my mind that that would be what she had decided to do. It does to a point make sense. Like if you're trying to sit there and be a fly on the wall and you're being told to just be seen and not heard and just observe, it would make sense maybe for you to pretend to be dumber than you are, because then you could maybe get to listen in on some things that they wouldn't say in front of you if they thought that you would conclude certain things.
Right, that you were clever enough to draw those conclusions.
Right.
That's fair.
But I feel like that's a little far-fetched. But as you said, we're only 6 chapters in, so there's still a lot of opportunities for that to kind of turn into something.
Yeah, we're not even a third of the way there when you think about it, right?
So, I mean, realistically, that could be a way that they go. And I guess it makes sense since Veraska talked about it. But I never would have thought that. I just would have thought, oh, they just did a poor job of characterizing this character yet again, because that's Wizards' MO basically.
Right, but I would argue, right, these stories have been a lot better, at least, right? So we can give that some credence there, but at the same time, I'm not in any way dismissing what you're saying, right, and saying, oh, Amy's wrong, don't listen to her. Like it's a very fair point. I think, interestingly, the point that you made, if Veraska had not brought it up at all, and then it was said later, like it was revealed later that she was playing dumb the whole time, I actually might have preferred that.
Yeah.
Because then it truly makes you want to go, oh my god. And then when she did this, and then when she did this, and it makes perfect sense. Right. Or, more importantly, which I think is somewhat important for novels to do, it would make me want to go back and read it. Because it would be like, there are probably minute things that I didn't pick up on.
That you missed.
Right. And then I can go back and read through it and be like, oh, the Hakara part's here, let me pay attention. Right. Oh, she did do that one thing. Right? She did say that in that one moment where these two characters were arguing with each other and they were going to be at each other's throats, and then she said something dumb and lightened the mood and it helped. You know what I mean? Like, that's an example that didn't necessarily happen, but is an example of something that could be the case. And so that's the kind of thing that I love that. That kind of thing I love. If something catches me by surprise and it gives me the opportunity to remember back to things in the story, and or, like I said, just straight up want to go back and read it and be like, I need to remind myself what happened because that's so cool. That's the kind of stuff I love, and I live for that. So I hope that you're wrong, but I do not think that it is unfair to draw the conclusion that you've drawn, if that makes sense. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, and I then we get to kind of going back to towards the beginning of the story. We get to Rahl then, after meeting with Lavinia, coming back down in the airship and going to Madman's Bridge. And we get the descriptions that I love in these stories, the in-depth description of Madman's Bridge. We get backstory of a locale.
Right.
That was so cool.
Awesome.
Of why it's called Madman's Bridge, how it still exists, but why very few people go on it, and why he's meeting on it, and that down in the... When they said that there was a massive crevasse, I knew, when they were talking about like the crumbling buildings and all that stuff, I knew that they were going to say that the Golgari lived down at the bottom of the crevasse. I just knew it. And technically that's not exactly true. It like helps connect the Golgari with... But in one way or another, the Golgari are associated with the bottom of that crevasse. And I loved maybe it's, maybe I'm a jerk, but I loved when Rahl said that there was a challenge or a tradition where the kids would go to like the broken down, like leaning down portion of the bridge and drop things on the Golgari by pissing on them. That's hysterical. And again, obviously it's not looking down at a specific person and urinating on a specific person. It's just kids being kids and going and peeing off a bridge.
And rude.
That's right. But I don't know. I mean, that's hilarious to me.
I can't say I agree.
That's fair. That's completely fair. Like I said, maybe I'm just a jerk. There were two kind of funny but cute moments in this one. The first was cute, the second was more funny. But Rahl genuinely thanking Lavinia, again, for the prior warning about going to the Selesnians, because it was a warranted warning.
Yeah.
And then gathering all this information about Veraska. Because, like you said, otherwise, and even with that, but I think it makes up for it ever so slightly, it's a way for him to show appreciation of some kind. It's a way to actually genuinely say thank you, because otherwise he's just like, great, good to see you. Why are you meeting me here? And why are you sneaking up behind me? And why are you... And then, oh, great, well, thanks for the information. Go tell me about Veraska now. Right? Like, otherwise he's just being a bossy jerk. And at the same time, he's not, right? He's just trying to get stuff done in the order that they need to get done. And so...
But he has to depend on her to help him.
Exactly, because he really doesn't have anybody else.
Right.
So he does. He gets that opportunity, and he genuinely thanks her. And she has that kind of moment of, like, stopping and, like, blushing and fixing her hair a little bit. And, like, and you made the comment, like, oh, she's got a crush on him or whatever. And it's like, yeah. And then later on, you see that same type of moment with Hekara and Veraska. And Hekara makes a comment about Veraska, and it's like, ooh, she like intrigues me, or something like that. Like, and we just talked about me being a jerk, right? We just talked about that, so I'm going to run with that. I'm going to run all the way. I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to be crass for a moment, and I'm going to touch on this, and then I'm going to move on. But I found that the comment that Hekara makes and the response that Rahl gives to her is like the most blatant sexual innuendo that I have ever heard in a magic story. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe I just have a dirty mind, but when Hekara says and sees Veraska take down her hood and says, don't you just want to grab onto the wriggly bits, meaning her hair, the tentacles of her hair, and Rahl says, Gorgons have been known to kill their lovers after being done with them, or whatever. I'm not quoting here, it's somewhat paraphrasing. To me, that, in my mind, was very akin to why people like pigtails on somebody. It was. That's why I said I'm being crass. I'm not going any further than that. It's why people like pigtails.
Oh my god.
And that's all I'm saying.
What?
It was super, I took that as being super inappropriate because how do you say, I want to grab the wriggly bits, and then Raul immediately is like, well, you know, they do this to their lovers. If somebody says, oh, I want to touch that person's hair, I don't automatically take that as a sexual thing.
I kind of do.
See, there you go. So so on one side of it, I'm not as crass, and on the other side of it, I'm way too crass. I don't know. Feel free, if you're comfortable, to let us know your thoughts about that in the comments. I have no idea. That was how
Hashtag Vorthos Pride, I guess.
That's how I took it, right? And maybe that's nowhere near where they were going, but I just thought it was I thought it was a far leap to go from I want to grab the wriggly bits to you want to be her lover and then she's going to kill you. Like, I don't know. I thought that was a little bit further of a jump, but you say that no, because you do kind of associate one with the other.
Well,
sort of.
Well,
Sometimes.
but I mean, the fact that she called it the wriggly bits is, you know, the reason why the comment was made. I mean,
because that is in and of itself an inappropriate statement. Yeah, that's fair.
and it obviously wouldn't normally refer to hair, if that's what you were saying.
True. Well, I mean, for Veraska it would, but yes,
Right.
you're right. You're right. Normally being like if she were referring to a human or an elf or whatever.
Or literally anyone else, pretty much.
Yeah, almost.
No one else has wriggly hair.
No. Well, no, but wriggly bits? I mean, the Crawl probably have some wriggly bits somewhere.
Yeah, but again, that would be much more sexual than hair.
That's a fair point. So anyway, now that we've moved past that extremely awkward topic of conversation, oh, here's something for Amy to talk about.
Tell us about sexy hair in the comments.
Raul makes a comment that you really appreciated, and I thought was very funny, but I wanted you to be able to talk about it. When Raul and Veraska meet up and they're talking, and Veraska is trying to explain her situation and looks at Raul and says, how familiar are you with Jace? And Raul basically says, in his head, not out loud, but he says to himself, he's like, even when he's not here, Bellerin's just at the center of everything, isn't he? And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that if you wanted to say anything about it.
I mean, my comment was just, of course he is. He is Jace. And isn't that... Fuck all.
Somewhere in the multiverse, Jace had like a little smile on the
Right.
on one side of his mouth, but he had no idea why. he just was like, somebody's talking about me. This is great. You know?
Yeah. It's like, fuck you, dude. No, but it's perfect because you know what? In that moment, I snapped back to hating Jace again. It was like a light switch, and I was like, oh my god, this part of this story is so perfect because we're in the head of somebody who only knows the old Jace.
True.
They don't know the new Jace.
True.
And it puts me right back in the headspace that I was always in when I knew the old Jace. And that's exactly what should happen, right?
That's a really good
Because if I was sitting there defending him to Raul, right? I mean, obviously I wouldn't because Raul is in the story and I'm not. But, you know, if reading the story made me sit there and defend Jace, because I'm like, yeah, I used to hate him too when he was the shitty Jace, but now he's the great Jace. So we shouldn't hate him, you know, and like I said, it's just great that my mind just snapped right back to where it used to be when I used to hate Jace because he was the shitty Jace, and he was exactly that guy. He was that kid that everyone hates, but they love at the same time. He's the most popular kid. He's like, you know, he's got everybody behind him. Anytime he has a party, you have to be there. Otherwise, it's social suicide. But you hate this kid. I mean, deep down, you actually hate this kid. He's the worst. But you have to go to his party. You have to do what he said because he's just in charge. But he's also a lazy fuck who, like, doesn't care about anyone but himself, right? That's Jace. That's the old Jace. And it put me right back in the headspace of feeling like that about Jace, because Rawl feels like that about Jace, because that's who Jace was when Rawl knew him. And so now Vraska's sitting there trying to explain to somebody who feels like that about Jace that Jace isn't like that, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. You know, because he cannot possibly fathom the person that Jace has become, right?
I want you guys so badly to rewind this video, right? Go back a little bit and tell me at what point in that diatribe did we stop talking about Jace and find out some new things about Amy's past? I don't in any way disagree with you. I just thought that was super funny when you were like, and then he was this kid and you have to go to his parties, and I'm like, where's this coming from?
I never went to any popular kids' parties. That never happened.
That's fair. I was with you at that time and I didn't either.
You were not.
Oh, okay. Even back then? All right. Even before me. That's fair. Neither did I regardless. So that's fair as well. I mean, I thought they were popular to me, the people's whose parties I went to. Everybody's popular to somebody, folks. That's what we've learned here today.
Everybody loves somebody.
So then that meeting between those two is done, or those four really. I mean, Zedek and Hakar were there as well. But that meeting is done, and Rahl leaves. And then for the second time, just super weirdly, a messenger who shouldn't know where Rahl is knows where Rahl is and just has a message for him.
Right.
I mean,
out of the blue.
Again, speaking of out of the blue, I mean, again, we know that there are Dimir spies everywhere. So that could be a thing where like a messenger's just like, hey man, I gotta know where this guy is. Oh, well, somebody saw him over there. All right. And then you go over there, or the Orzhov have spies. So, and there are Thopters everywhere. So who the hell knows, right? Whatever. But so another messenger.
GPS on your cell phone.
Another messenger finds him now with the message that, I mean, I just assumed that Tomek would have waited to see Rahl at some point at home, but Rahl even mentions that he's been so busy with the guild summit that Tomek hasn't really gotten to see him anyway. So I guess that makes a bit of sense that Tomek then would have sent a messenger for Rahl and basically says, I need to see you.
To untie the note from the little pigeon's leg. It's just.
And Rahl even notes, because we saw this earlier, that there were no like runes of protection, if you will, or whatever on the note. Which I think was just their way of like telling us before telling us that it wasn't from Niv Mizzet.
Absolutely.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. And then we got to see, Tomek writes in the letter, I need to talk to you as soon as you're available. Basically, it's guild business. And there's that, buzz phrase again of like,
and that was his way of like letting him know, like, look, this is a serious thing. It's guild business, even though we don't talk about guild business. Yeah.
And it was really, then you get to a cute part. A very cute part in the story, and again, more of the advancement or continuation of the relationship between Tomek and Rahl, and it feels very natural, right? Tomek is very nervous and like stuttering and like stumbling over himself and repeating himself over and over again and kind of stretching out getting to the point.
Right.
And Rahl is just like, pulls him in and hugs him and then pulls him away and kisses him, and they're kissing each other for a little while, and then Rahl's like, listen, it's fine. Tell me what you want to tell me. Maybe it's time for the guild business, personal business thing to go away. I trust you. And that's really cool. That's a really nice moment in their relationship where Rahl is like, listen, you feel that it is an appropriate time to talk to me about this stuff. You feel that it's important enough, right? It's not necessarily like, this is the next step in our relationship. It's just that, hey, look, this is important enough and I need your help now.
Right.
And Rahl's like, I trust you. Like, I trust that you're not going to let this ruin our relationship. And Tomek even says, we have a good thing going here, right? I don't want to mess it up with what I'm about to say to you.
Right.
And that's when Rahl says to him, you won't, I trust you. Really adorable. Really, really cool to see. And a legitimate conversation that a couple would have with one another.
Definitely had that conversation.
Right. And obviously it depends on what the allegory would be to real life, right? Because it wouldn't be like guild business, but you could have a couple that work in contrary businesses or something like that. Who knows, right? There are a multitude of things that a couple could be discussing where they don't talk about it and then they decide to talk about it because they've realized that they feel that their relationship is stronger than the hardship that would be caused by talking about this thing that is either awkward or inappropriate or whatever to discuss.
Right.
And so they do, and they talk about it. And we even get to see some of the planning behind it, which I loved. Again, no fight scenes, but a lot of action, if you will, in this story, because then we get to see the meeting. Sorry, when they're making attack plans, just Rahl and Tomek, we get to hear, which I appreciate, again, talking about details and details about the world of Ravnica.
Before
please,
you get to that
please,
point,
sorry.
I liked that Rahl's response was, "I trust you," because it perfectly mirrors the end of the last story where Tomek's like, "No, let me talk to Rahl. He trusts me."
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Because he was saying that, realizing that just the mere fact of him being the one to talk to him about this might make that statement untrue at that point.
Good point.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "No, let me do it. He trusts me." And then went home and sat there and probably thought about how little Rahl might be able to trust him at that point, right? And then once he talks to Rahl in this story, what ultimately happens is Rahl says, "No, it's like, this isn't gonna mess anything up. As you say, we've got a good thing going here.
Mm-hmm.
I trust you." You know, so it's the perfect sort of evolution of their relationship, because it really shows Tomek kind of going through that crazy fear in his mind of you know, being afraid of not being able to get over that hump with the person that you're with, because something is possibly going to mess it up, you know, and then them saying, "Yep, nope, it's gonna be fine," and him getting to realize, okay, I was right in saying, I will tell Rahl, he trusts me, because he actually does.
Right, and it's not. If there were a similar situation to that, I could see that being the flip side, where Tomek is like being sinister about it, and he's like, "Let me do it. He trusts me," and it's a way of betraying Rahl by being like, "I'm going to betray that trust or use him for the fact that he trusts me." And no, it's really like
advantage of the situation that he trusts me.
And really, it's the opposite, where Tomek's like, "I don't want to do this, but I know that I have to. Right? I feel that I have to, and so I'm going to go to him as someone who I trust and who trusts me, and I'm going to say, you know, please, I need your help with this." But even as he's doing it, he kind of almost gets cold feet because he's so afraid.
Well, and that's the reason, too, why Rahl decided to make the rule in the first place, that they don't talk about guild business. Because he didn't want it to be a sinister thing.
Yeah.
He didn't want it to be okay, what am I going to have to do for the Orzhov now? Simply because if I want to have a relationship with you, I have to do things for the Orzhov.
Well, and as we've seen, with Ravnica being what it is and so steeped in espionage as just a concept, it could also be something that could be manipulated. And one could be used against the other due to their relationship as well, combined with their level of influence within those two pretty popular guilds, and them being at such high levels in those two guilds. Yeah. So that's a very good point. And then, speaking of the high levels of those two guilds, because those two are at such high level positions, I thought it was really nice, again, getting more details and information about Ravnica, which I love. Just give it to me. I'll eat it up all day. You know, I'll absorb all of it, or as much as I can. The information that we get about the inner workings or the high-level workings of the Izzet and the Orzhov when it comes to making these attack plans. Of like, we can't have a bunch of because one, there's a ton of bureaucracy that we have to go through and all these different levels of people that it has to go through. But secondly, and probably more importantly or more worrisome, is the fact that there are Orzhov spies everywhere.
Right.
Because the Orzhov are second only to the Dimir in terms of their ability to gather information, although they do kind of sideways reference the Thopters now at this point as well, because now the Azorius are getting into the surveillance game, which makes sense but is unfortunate. But you have the Orzhov spies, and if the Orzhov in any way catch wind of what's going on, they'll be ready for them, and it'll blow the whole plan. And that's just more information about the inner workings and the strengths and weaknesses of those guilds and those guild leaders and the upper level management of those guilds. Yeah. And I loved that. I loved that a lot. Because it was not beaten over the head. Right. It was very quick, but it's just more information. And it's so dense with information in such a small area. And I loved that a lot. Like, I was just really, really okay with that. And then finally, we have the meeting of Hekara, Vraska, Ral, and Kaya, making plans to execute this attack on the Orzhov so that they can get in, take out the Ghost Council, and as we know, Kaya then becomes in charge, which is funny because currently what everyone is saying, Tomek included, is when that happens, Teyza will take control, and Teyza will be the one to bring the Orzhov to the table.
Right.
We all know that's not the case.
Right.
And so I'm curious to see at what point that occurs, and we've kind of heard it with Kaya, where like she kills them, so she takes on their debts, or the debts that they are kind of lording over everybody else with, and so that, I guess, is what makes her the leader, but we will find that out. I'm not going to further speculate. That'll definitely come up, but they meet, they're discussing the plan. Again, you see a bit of kind of back and forth between Kaya meeting Hekara and Ral and Vraska for the first time, and vice versa, right? They're all kind of meeting her and trying to figure out a way to trust her as well. So I liked that a lot. It's just more characters talking to each other, so in even the subtle ways, you still get to learn about each and every one of them in that way. Yeah. And I have always loved that. Go back to like JaAR number 2, and I'm sure I talked about it. Like, it's definitely something that I really enjoy. So, and that was really the end of the story. Although, sorry, technically we find out Ral is somewhat untrusting of Vraska.
Yeah. And
says to her, he's like, seriously though, why are you doing this? Why is it so easy that you, the Queen of the Golgari, just showed up here? And you're willing to give us all of your people, right? All of your numbers, whatever. And Vraska vehemently says, no one in my guild is an Orzhov spy because their gold doesn't do as much in the underground. Which makes sense, because it seems like they would barter more with rot or whatever, like, death or decay they would trade with in the Golgari that would be relevant to them. And so she says, like, their gold doesn't go that far with us, so don't worry about it. My people will not have any spies among us, and you won't get caught. And Ral's like, so it's that easy? And Vraska's like, yeah, sure. And Ral pulls her aside, and he's like, no, really. Why is it that easy? And at that point, we're in Vraska's head, the last portion of the story, and Vraska says, yeah, it's important. We need to get them to the table. And then in her head, she's going, besides, Jace might be there or like me for it or whatever. Right. Which makes a bit of sense, I guess, maybe. But anyway, so yeah, then that.
Well, it may make her look like a little bit less of an asshole to Jace, I guess.
Maybe. But yeah, I think that was it for the story.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was it. That was chapter 6. Very good. I think it seems like, especially because all of the key players are now together, I don't think there is much more for us to do in chapter 7 except go for this invasion or this fight, this distraction, except that we may just go into a flashback again for a bit. Who knows? That's the only thing I can think of that could derail us slightly. But for now, we are going to be done with this week, and we will be back next week, so definitely stay tuned for more. We hope that you enjoyed. We hope that you have been checking out some of the videos on our channel besides this, because we do have other content. We've been basically uploading 3 videos a week, which is something that's a bit of a treat. Usually it's just 2, but we've had some other stuff in the docket. I can't promise that the 3 videos will stay forever, but for now they are here. So definitely enjoy them. Stay tuned for them. And thank you all so very much for watching this, those, any and all. And Amy mentioned it before, somewhat sarcastically, but also very relevantly. Give us any and all opinions. We talked about some racy stuff this time, but we also talked about some legitimate stuff, and anything and everything that you want to comment on regarding this story, regarding our thoughts and our opinions and our review.
Please do.
We want to hear from you. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? We would love some discussion among all of you, with us as well, because it's a really good way to join us and your fellow Vorthos in showing off your...
#Vorthos Pride.
It's important. What can I say? So, once again, thank you all so very much for watching this episode of JaAR here on Geek for All. I have been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.